Good afternoon, and welcome to another in the series of our talks focusing on the Society of Genealogists, Treasures and Collections. This time the subject is Trades and Occupations, and our speaker is Elsa Churchill, who is the genealogist at the Society of Genealogists. She regularly teaches in our education programme, as well as at overseas events and conferences, focusing on genealogy before 1837. Over to you, Elsa.
Thanks, Grant, and welcome everybody. Yes, this is part of a regular series of talks about the Society and its remarkable library and archives and how it's possible to access some of our treasures. And today I'll be concentrating on what we have at Wharf Road and also what we have made available online in our digital collections. There's no handout as such for this talk, but I will certainly make a PDF copy of all the slides in case there's something you want to go back and look at. And because today's topic is so broad, I'm going to be a bit pushed to get it all in 30 minutes, but I'll give it a very good try. So here we are. This is the Society of Genealogists at Wharf Road. For those of you who are new to us, we were founded in 1911 and we're now in our fifth building. And we have a remarkable facility for anyone researching their family history. And of course, we're an affiliates family search partnered library, which makes access to all the resources that they have digitized and made available to affiliates available also at Wharf Road. And of course, I'll be looking to see how our collections perhaps supplements or working tandem with some of the things you might have access online through the commercial genealogy websites such as Ancestry, Find My Past and the Genealogists, which are also all available at Wharf Road. We call the library and archive our research hub, and there we tend to try to create a working genealogical research resource where we concentrate on bringing material into the library and making them online where we can. Of course, not everything is ours in the library is ours to publish online, but we particularly have a working library with things like sort of texts and guides and journals and periodicals, particularly focusing on resources for where your ancestors lived. That's for the UK and overseas genealogy resources and records, particularly for the former colonies where the British migrated to. That include vital records of birth, marriages and deaths, church baptisms, marriages and burials, census directories and other local records. We have a huge library and archive focusing on what research has been done before, with thousands of compiled family histories and pedigrees, and extensive manuscript collections of genealogy research notes and papers. But the third focus is really, what did your ancestors do? And that's very much trying to create the story of what your ancestors did in their lives through their occupational records, education, apprenticeship, military service, tax records, criminal records, poor law, newspapers, trade directories, ecclesiastical licenses, church court records, monumental inscriptions and tombstones, etc., etc., etc. But the focus on what your ancestors did in their lives is absolutely something that has accumulated in the 110 years that we've been around. And of course, that's reflected in some of the titles we publish and make available from our bookshop or within the gold members area of the website, ranging from of interest in the most common occupations, agricultural labourers and servants, to artisans, traders and craftsmen, people working in nationalised heavy industries such as railway workers and mines, and of course information on professional people. And sort of where those are the kind of things you think about, what did my ancestors do in their lives? What might be recorded? And the kind of things we collect will be looking at the sort of material within the library and the archives and the online resources to have sort of background material. So this might be material that's in book form, electronic and micromedia, on and off the shelves. So it is vital that I need to show you how to use the various catalogues. We have no one catalogue or finding aid that lists everything we have in the library. Our archive manuscript collections can be of interest here as well. And of course, we have quite a lot of material that's digitized and online that's particularly pertinent to this subject. So it does give me a bit of a challenge in 30 minutes. So it gives a sort of high level overview. you certainly need to start looking for the catalogues. To kind of things that we collect might be compiled family and business histories, where people are talking about their occupations and what they found out about their ancestors in the story that they're telling about them. We might try and collect name-rich material, directories, lists, professional lists, where indicating that that person actually practiced that trade. You might want to find out what that trade was, how it operated, what the background history. We have particularly good material for apprenticeship before 1800, and we have become, by happenstance really, an archive for some original records, a large amount of which have gone online, where we have particularly collected material for what people did in their lives relating to particular trades and occupations, for example. So this is a kind of high-level thing that you think of, how can the society help you, and what you might want to be looking for the various catalogues and lists that we make available to help you find what we've got. The website will, of course, tell you how to visit the library, and in some cases where things are listed in the catalogue, where they're not on the open shelves, the catalogue will indicate that you might need to make a visit to view the item and order it in before you come, and all that information about visiting, as well as links to the library catalogue for published works, things on microfiche, microfilm, as well as in book form, the lists listing what are in our archive collections, the manuscript collections, some of the online resources that you can access either at home or in the library, and of course our collection guides. Are probably the good things to have a look at before you sort of venture into what's at the Society of Genealogists. Let's have a look at some of the manuscript archive folders. These are copies of the old paper lists that we used to keep in the library, which we have digitized and made PDF copies in anticipation of creating a better archive catalogue. And before that archive catalogue comes online, you can look at the scanned copy of the sort of archive card catalogue for listing the names that appear in the special collections. You can look at the list of names that appear in some of our document research notes. You can look at the more detailed collection reports of the documents and special and small collections, as we call them. So, for example, if you were to go through those pathways, you might find there's a wonderful collection such as the research notes of David Edward Sear, who compiled this huge family history of notes and pedigrees and extracts and records that he found in the course of his research. But he also compiled many photographic images and about the family, which in this case were connected with confectionery and retailing. They were grocers and tea sellers, and the 4 boxes contain many fascinating pictures and information about all the shops and the shopkeepers referenced to in their family letters and albums, etc. So again, this is the absolute insight of what a family history can tell you about their trades and the things that they were involved in. So there's just some things that have cropped up through the manuscript special collections, other people's research notes in hundreds of boxes of ephemera and paper, just like the stuff that any family historian might accumulate. To search the library and digital collections, you'd really need to start through the website, through the research hub path menus. Take the drop down menu to search collections online, where you have access to the library catalogue. If you click that tab for yellow, that will give you the ability to search the library catalogue, and the 2 digital platforms, SoG and our collections of digital material, I'll come to in a minute. But this is probably a good place to start, and this is where you might just want to put not only just search name and place, but you can also pop in just an occupation that you're interested in as a good, simple sort of start. What has the library got? So here, for example, I just popped in the phrase baker, and the catalogue showed that about 30 or 40 items came up, and I've just extracted a few that I thought were typical of the kind of things that we might have. Whether it's the extract from the wonderful Book of Trades published in the beginning of the 19th century, describing what bakers did in the 19th century, a history of the Bakers' Company, some family and local history about baker businesses, in this case in Waltham Forest, or the Bakers' Company records in the borough of Leicester, history of Peak Freens, and apprentice records for the London Livery Company of Bakers, or the Corporation of Bakers in Glasgow. So again, these are for some are name rich, some are background history, just the kind of things very typical of what you might find. And the catalogue tells you where it is, whether it's in the on the open shelves, in this case on the England County collection shelves in the library, or it might tell you that it's in here we've got something called the Professions Occupation Tracts box. These tend to be smaller pamphlets and guides, like typical like a little Shire library guide background. And if it's in off-site store with a BX number, you'd have to order that item in before you come, and we'd have that ready for you to view. But a lot of the local material will be on the open shelves in the Society's library. So again, here's some other things that have come up when I put particular artisans. So if I'm looking for clockmakers, here we've got some of the guides. These are very typical. You've seen, for example, on the Antiques Roadshow, where the expert this gives you a lot of information about a particular artisan or craftsman who made something. Well, they've probably looked at these reference books, such as Brian Loom's Lancashire Clock and Clockmakers, or Britain's Old Clocks and Watches and Their Makers, which has gone to several editions. Often we know, where somebody was practicing that trade, and particularly in the UK, these have been drawn from directories, for example. And again, we've got lots of those in the library, the reference works relating to a particular trade or occupation that you'd use. Something like William Todd's Dictionary of Printers and Allied Trades in London and its vicinity between 1800 and 1840. And again, little synopses and biographical information about printers is very much the kind of thing that we would collect, and that would come up if you just search for printers in the Society's catalogue. We haven't abstracted the name in every one of these reference works, so it's up to you then to come and view the item to see if it has some biographical information about the particular artisan or printer in this case that you might be interested in. But these are very much the kind of reference works which have been published. Sometimes these things, like the Dictionary of British Furniture Makers 1500 to 1940, have formed the basis of websites that you might expect to find that information now, such as the British and Irish Furniture Makers. But that was drawn from the dictionary, and we got a copy of the original dictionary of British Furniture Makers in the library, of course. Here, for example, that work on printers was used for the Bodleian Library's British Book Trade Index, which has also gone online. Again, these have used things like directories, and again, we've got a lot of those, which I'll come to in a minute. You can do more sophisticated searches and advanced searches in the library catalogue, and I had a bit of a browse through some of the subject headings from the catalogue associated with professions and occupations, and it did note that we had over 11,000 catalogue entries with relating to professions and occupations, and that's an awful lot for me to try and distill in just 30 minutes. But again, that's the indication of catalogue entries for books, microfiche, CDs, etc. Amongst those 11,000, I noted there were 596 company or business histories, over 300 law lists and 400 medical lists. And I was particularly intrigued by the fact that we had over 300 periodical entries, because I never thought that there were sort of occupational periodicals that might be of interest, and that came as a bit of a surprise to me when I was just browsing through some of them, of how niche and interesting some of the things that we collected in there. Anyway, you'd expect us to have something like the Journal of the Police History Society, but I did love the idea, the magazine and journal of the Prudential Clerks Society from the late 19th century, or the monthly review of the Incorporated Society of Inspectors of Weights and Measures from the early 20s. And again, these might be trade, it's actually, you might call them trade magazines, where people might be writing about other people in their occupation, writing about how to get the best practices, even advertisements for people selling their businesses. So what I often recommend is looking at the British Library newspaper collection for trade magazines. I was amazed at how many trade professional periodicals we had in our library as well. Of course, some of the most important sources after the census to tell you what occupations your ancestors might be involved with would be the local directories. And in fact, so rich and vast is our collection of local trade directories, as I'm doing another hour-long talk on using local trade directories for family history in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm not going to say much more than saying that we have a huge collection of things like the Kelly Post Office collections, other directories from Piggott's and other publishers, ranging from the 18th into the 20th century. We've got a particularly good run of 20th century directories for counties and large cities. And it's worth looking in our library catalogue. And indeed, we have digitized some, and they're starting to go online in our digital collections. But again, you'll hear more about this in a couple of weeks' time. We have got a very comprehensive collection of local poll books, ranging from the end of the 17th century going right through into the middle of the 19th century, up to the introduction of private secret ballots in the 1870s. These poll books actually are lists of men, I'm afraid it was men at those times, who voted and who they voted for, but often their occupation, because they're freemen of a borough, for example, is often shown in the poll book. And I was surprised how, for example, in the borough of Aylesbury, where it's one of these what's known as the potwalloper borough, where virtually anyone in the borough could vote, the indication of not only who voted, but how the variety of occupations were shown, such as basket makers, labourers, bricklayers, tailors, drapers, schoolmasters, sawyers, etc., etc. Quite a wide franchise, but again, almost like a little list of directories of men who were voting, with their occupation showing within that place. And these are also going to be quite useful for if you're researching the City of London, for example, because the poll books are often the first indication of that somebody might be a freeman of the city and having gained his right to vote as a freeman by being a freeman of a guild or city livery company, and giving you an indication of what guild or city livery company he was actually a member of. And again, so that gives you a first indication to follow on more records relating to that guild and city livery company. In cities which did have a broad electorate, such as Westminster, the poll books not only give you where they're living, but again, the occupation. Again, some remarkable resources in this case take us back into the 18th century. So giving you a clue of what your ancestors did in their lives. Another thing, we have quite an extensive collection of professional lists. As I said, we've got over 300 law lists and 400 medical lists, and often lists of those that aped the earlier professions. So moving on from clergymen, lawyers and doctors, we've got lists of dentists, veterinarians, architects, accounts, chemists, druggists, and I would even count the officers' lists from in the army lists, the RAF and Army and Navy lists, as well as being good professional lists. And if you're lucky, you may get the date of they're registered with the profession, how they qualified, a bit of information about their service history and education, and occasionally even an indication of a date of birth or age. So ranging from the professional army lists, which range in our library back to the 18th century, and the professional other lists like law, and here I'm going to use medicine as an example. I said there were over 11,000 items under the term medicine under professions, occupations. We have a very early medical directory from 1779, which had no index, but we've indexed that and put that online. And then a very good run of medical directories, the informal medical directories from the 1840s, as well as the formal medical register from 1859 that you can be struck off. Things like publications from the College of Dentistry or the Nursing Register from the late 1890s. And you can do more advanced searches in the catalogue. So if I did a search, for example, using medicine and family history, that brought up over 200 hits of compiled family histories, biographies, etc., of medical families, such as the ancestors and descendants of Dr. Daniel Watkins, 1791 to 1882, surgeon superintendent on the SC Cressy, who was plying the trade between England and New Zealand. So just searching under medicine brings up all sorts of diverse items, whether it's the role of the Indian Medical Service, alumni of Glasgow University, where many medics studied, to lists of persons who obtained a certificate of their fitness and qualification to practice as an apothecary from 1815 to 1840. So again, things that you can think of sort of good keywords that you could search for those to do library catalogues. You can do that through simple search as well as the browse by subject search in the library catalogue. And for medical sources before 1800, we have a rather rare copy of the very useful work, entitled 18th Century Medics by P.J. and R.V. Wallace, which indexes surgeons' apprenticeships and subscriptions to medical textbooks, etc. So it's a very good sort of alphabetical list of early medics before about 1800. We've got, of course, all the guides that you'd expect us to, but whether you're looking to see what records for surgeons there may be at the Barber Surgeons Company, for example. And of course, we've even got the things like the published licenses issued by the Diocese of London to physicians and surgeons practicing in the diocese, going back to published licenses into the 16th century. So some of our collection for medicine can be actually earlier than that. That's made available on Ancestry, for example, because they've made the medical register browsable and searchable from when it starts in 1859. And we've got, of course, got free access to that in the Society's library. But I think some of our collection actually supplements this and indeed goes earlier than some of the things you might find on the commercial genealogy websites. I'm doing a focus in October on all the sources we have for lawyers, because we have some remarkable good lists, again, good runs of law lists, and some interesting work on solicitors compiled by some former members where we've digitized and made databases of their work. And I'll be talking about the Bristol Attorneys, Brian Brooks' Solicitors' Works, and Tim Cockrell's Lawyer Index when I look at some of the focus on legal sources in the library next month. But again, we've got lots of useful resources for published lists. So men who, for example, were educated in the various inns of courts. And here's some of the works on the legal profession from the library that I'll be talking about next week. Again, for professional men such as Anglican clergymen, we have a very good run of clergy lists from the 1840s and the Crockford's Clerical Directories from 1858, the Alumni Oxoniensis and Canterburygiensis for Oxford and Cambridge universities, and some other universities as well, such as Glasgow, that I was talked about earlier on. We've got quite a lot of published ecclesiastical licenses that show the appointment of clergymen in various diocesan records, and a lot of our material, again, is quite useful in this case for the 19th century and later, because the online clergy database actually focuses on clergymen before 1840. So if you're researching after that period, then some of the printed sources in our library can be incredibly useful. Again, we've got our material tends to be earlier than the Crockford's clerical directories that you can find on Ancestry, but again, we have access to those. They've got sort of pretty much one for every 10 years. We might be able to fill in the gaps of some of those that you can find online. Sometimes we do have card indexes and notes compiled by members with a specific interest in that, and we haven't yet digitised James William Fawcett's index to clergymen, his card index drawn from local ecclesiastical licenses and other published works. But again, certainly taking you back into the 18th century and earlier, definitely worth something if you've got any interest in clergymen, just to see what Mr. Fawcett came across. And again, there's a microfilm of that index at the Society. As I mentioned, there's quite a lot of published ecclesiastical licenses from church courts, which license not only surgeons and physicians, but midwives, teachers, and other clergymen. And again, those are well worth having to see if they're published. And we've got those. It's the kind of thing we focused on in the Society. Of course, we'll have all the guides that you expect to read up to see. So, where do I go for records relating to things perhaps at the state controlled, whether it's nationalised industries such as coal mining, railway workers and records, or indeed the things like the Metropolitan Police records at the National Archives. And indeed, just doing a search on police in the Society's library, we've got an awful lot of transcriptions and indexes from some of the MEPO records from the National Archives in the library. I was quite surprised at how many of those. So again, doing a search on police brings those up, as well as guides, resources, and even transcripts of records relating to local and provincial police forces. We have a huge amount of material relating to apprenticeship records at the Society. And again, that really is going to be a talk in its own right. But we certainly have the index that we created to the tax levied on apprenticeship between 1710 to 1811 from the IR1 series of records at the National Archives. We published and have always focused on City of London apprenticeship records. We have a huge number of the indexes to those in the library. We have some original collections of apprentice indentures collected by document dealers like Frederick Arthur Crisp and Mr. Clench, and of course lots of the information about local borough freeman records and apprenticeships, and again quite a lot of material in the parish records that we've got relating to parish poor apprenticeships. But I wanted to spend the last 5 minutes or so, if I can, talking about some of the special collections at the Society where we have become effectively an archive of records because no other archive really wanted them. And we've put a significant amount of those online. And this is where I wanted to show you how you could find some of the indexed records, and indeed with some of the images of the records themselves as well, where we are an archive and have focused on a variety of occupations and how you can access them. We have put some of our data online in partnership with Find My Past, but we of course have our own and more on our website, where you will find our old platform, which we used to called SoG Digital, or sometimes My SoG, where we're migrating all of that from that platform to a new platform called SoG Explore. That's what we mean by these two collections here on the Research Hub search pathway. Go to SoG Explore or our collections, and not everything from our collections have got into SoG Explore yet, but it's changing every week. So it's almost worth looking at both until eventually everything comes out from here, and it will be in here. So, for example, on the old SoG collections, you could browse through those and search and see that we have a number of collection of data sets, sometimes just browsable books, but often indexed data full of name-rich resources, from bankers through to transport, teachers, shopkeepers, merchant seamen, etc. So you could do name searches on those or browse and search individual data sets. As I say, we are transferring those over, and to make sure that you can focus on just the material within our within SoG Explore, you can currently elect the category for work. That's kind of the old, rather, as opposed to the old occupations. It's called work in the new SoG Explore, and then working on some of the particular data sets or images that we're moving over, you can use the drop-down menu to focus on apprenticeships, bankers, civil servants, coastguards, the customs and excise, lace-making, legal profession, lifeboatmen, local government, medical profession, merchant seamen, musicians, some various ones, pharmaceutical, railway workers, teachers. As I say, pretty much ad hoc, but some interesting things within them. So, for example, there's the database which we've called the Business Index, which indexes some name-rich and visual-rich late 19th and 20th century directories. Not only can they index by name, but you can see that they have lots of business and historical background information about a lot of the businesses in that directories as well. So we like that. We thought it'd be interesting to look at that. We took in the Trinity House petitions from Trinity House in the 1930s, and these contain a huge amount of biographical information on the families of seamen who applied for financial assistance after the mariner had died. The index is online on SoG data. We haven't digitized the records themselves, but you can order a copy through the copy search service, or come in to view the digitized copies of the data at the SoG. Again, we took in from, because nobody else wanted it, the collection known as the Civil Service Commission Evidences of Age. Evidences brought to the Civil Service Commission of people's births and age, and it ranges. We said it actually covered the years 1855, from when they introduced civil service pensions up to 1939. But actually, on indexing this material, a lot of it showed evidences of age for civil servants born well before 1855, and indeed there's 22% of it is actually for evidences of people born in Ireland well before the start of civil registration, or indeed affidavits and evidence of where the evidence of that age had been very difficult to find. Again, this is online with the images as well. One of our members actually recommended that we take the Great Western Railway probate stock registers. This indicates people who invested in Great Western Railway stock between the period 1835 to 1932. Again, we've shared that with Find My Past. But there are some interesting little data sets online relating to railway workers themselves. We indexed unindexed books like the History of the Great Western Railway, indexing all names that appeared in that. And as just by happenstance, some British Rail staff cards for the LNNER Railway in Doncaster. Again, they were being thrown out, and someone offered them to us, and we couldn't really turn them down. They are some interesting. We cut the staff cards there. Again, they're indexed by name. You have to come in to view the staff card if you want to look at the full entry. Here, one of our members he's get very annoyed if he found books that didn't have name indexes in them, so he indexed the medal recipients of the Lifeboat Gallantry Awards between 1924 and 1997. The Customs and Excise staff registers again came to us because the National Archives didn't want them. The National Archives already had the pension records. They thought that the personnel registers showing Customs and Excise staff members who were born before 1911 would duplicate the material, but as the pension record, as the pension records haven't gone online, our digitisation of these personnel records for customs and excise staff registers can actually be a way into some of the unindexed and unpublished material at the National Archives. And again, the National Archives didn't want the Teachers Registration Council registers showing teachers who had registered with the council from about 1908 up to 1945, prior to the Butler Education Acts, and while registration with the council wasn't compulsory, many did, and it often gives you the education background of that particular teacher, where they qualified, and the various schools that they taught at. There were two series of these little ring binder folders for thousands of entries. The S is the indication that the Department of Education, who were maintaining this register, had evidence of that teacher having died in service. So, but both sets of series have been digitized and online on SoG Digital Collections. Here again was a card index eventually given to us by a former SoG member, Eileen Stage, who had compiled lots of notes on coastguards. And again, this is a digitized card index that we've put online. So you can see that we have a huge variety of ways of focusing on what your ancestors may have done in their lives. You can search by the catalogues, by the particular occupation. You can search some of the digital collections, not only by name. There'll be more and more material for browsing from the library books being put online as we go. And when our new archive catalogue comes out, you'll be able to interrogate some of our manuscript collections in different ways than just by surname, as you can from the paper list now. But there is such a vast amount of material for creating the stories of your ancestors' lives through what they did in their lives, that I think the Society's library is a great place to start. And on that, I'll stop there and take any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Right. Malcolm, I gather that you're doing the questions.
I believe so. So I'd better turn my microphone on. Right. Sorry. Yes, I was just answering. Is there a handout from a late joiner? Yes, PDF slides will be coming along with tomorrow's email for the recording link. There's been some thanks. Someone who grew up in Boston and remembers Grimble and Kent's.
All right.
More thanks. Couple of questions on inevitably trades that you couldn't fit into the half hour. Is there anything on the Salters Guild? Someone has Salter ancestors.
Yep. We have 2 items in the library called the Salters Company. We have histories, but not the guild records themselves. That suggests to me that either Cliff Webb hadn't got around to it. He was the main indexer of the apprenticeship records that he indexed for us that we published. It's one of the big 12 companies, so I suspect it's one of the larger companies, and Cliff, not surprisingly, did 60 or so of the smaller companies before he got round to the big ones. So it might be worth checking to see what records are at the Guildhall Library, and whether the Salters Company has its own website. I could check for you quickly to see what there are, but I can't quite reach the book I need. But just that bit out of reach without me dismantling my whole bookshelf in front of you on camera. So your answer was no. You checked.
Have you not got a cat trained to pass the books down to you?
I think they ought to earn their keep, certainly. Yes. So other than the history of the Salters Company, we don't have the apprenticeship records for those now.
Right, I see more thanks coming in. On a similar vein, um, have is there anything much on congregational ministers? Is that
Yes,
an
I mean,
occupation or religion?
well, in our classification, it would be under religion, and I did do a talk on nonconformist resources for at the Society of Genealogists, which may be on our YouTube channel or in the gold area. So have a look to go back and see if you could do that. So yes, we have got quite a lot of similar type of, publications, listings, those kind of things. So definitely doing sort of keyword searches in the library, in the library catalogue, congregation lists, that kind of thing, will bring up quite a lot of lists, but probably not so much online from our websites, I'm afraid. You'd have to come into the library once you've done the searches in the catalogue.
And Rachel has just posted a link to occupational talks coming up. Sorry, no salters. But well, become an expert and then you can offer a talk on the topic.
Well, yeah.
Yes, I think I don't see any more questions in the chat. So
I'm just going to wait to see if Elsa comes up with the book. As I assume that's what's happening.
I was just seeing if I could reach it without. Let's have a look at the Sources company records. They hold their own records, so they're not at the Guildhall Library. There's a catalogue of their records available at the Guildhall Library, but you would need to contact the archivist, and I suspect they've got a very good website because most of them do very much now. But this is one of those big. It's one of the bigger city companies, and it is the bigger ones that tend to retain their own records and archives. So yes, so they're held at Salters Hall still.
Right. Ruth's posted that your talk on nonconformist records is available in the members area, but not on YouTube.
Oh, right. Okay.
Gillian's asked, obviously joining in the what about the trades that you didn't get to mention? How
Yeah.
about indigo manufacturers?
Who?
Indigo manufacturers.
Yes, I suspect. So I'm just going to do a keyword in the catalogue for indigo. So rather, I'm going to search. I'm going to do the simple search on that. I'm just going to put in indigo and see what comes up. And I bet you
there's something.
It's probably. Are we talking about paints or dyes? And might be under dyers, perhaps.
Yeah, in this case, there's things like there's the Bengal indigo planters of 1840 being a list of indigo plantations in Bengal and Agra, with the Bengal and Agra Annual Guide and Gazetteer. How bizarre! One of the things I took out were some of the things that we've got, like the definitions of occupations and things drawn from the censuses, which were very much used and there's the Census Dictionary of Occupations that we've got a facsimile of on CD-ROM at the library, but it's also part of the 1921 census online from Find My Past, and that might be that dictionary might be worth looking to see for related terms that you might want to look at as well.
It's also freely available from Peter Christian's website without subscribing to anything.
It is indeed. And I took those 4 slides out about that because I knew I was going to run for at least 35 minutes on this talk. That's always what you take out. Yeah. Yep.
Friend is trying to find a solicitor's clerk, not article. We assume this might be too lowly a profession to have a society.
Yeah. Yes, when you think of it as a sort of Mr. Cratchit-like level of, I don't think you see them listed in the early law lists at all, but somewhere in the back of my mind, there's something about them getting more formalized in the late 19th and 20th century. this might be a case where Google is your friend in this one to see how that develops.
Yes.
But again, you know, solicitors, clerks is always, you know, you can search the library catalogue by where it says search, do the advanced search by, you know, use the drop down by word. You can actually put a little phrase in just to see what might comes up.
Hmm.
Okay, that looks
Right.
like it then, I think, is it?
That's it, I think, then. So
Thank you very much, Elsa. That's wonderful, and I'll stop the recording there. Thank you very much indeed.